Hello and welcome to this video about Henry Ford in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We will have a tour and spend the night at the Ford Center in Alberta that Ford built in the early 1930s to be a utopian milling community. It's now owned by Michigan Tech University. We'll visit their gift shop and an old pump house. We'll also visit an old lumber mill and the remains of the lumber community Ford bought in Pequaming. We'll tour the Ford Bungalow, Henry Ford's beautiful home on Lake Superior. Along the way, we'll check out an old Humpback bridge Ford traveled over, as well as Herman, an old lumber ghost town, and cemeteries in Herman and Pequaming where the mill workers were buried in the 18 and early 1900s, many from Finland and Scandinavia. As a bonus, we'll hike to the Ogima waterfall and also to the tip of gorgeous Point Abbaye or Abbey, where we will walk out on Jacobsville sandstone ledges over the beautiful Lake Superior, all with the backdrop of gorgeous fall colors. I have an interest in Ford because my grandfather had a Ford dealership and sold some of the first Ford motorized vehicles. Constructed in 1935 by Henry Ford, Alberta consisted of a sawmill, 12 houses, 2 schoolhouses, and a reception building. Henry Ford's vision for Alberta was to create a self-sufficient community where employment, education, culture, and beauty would combine. Visitors were always welcome at the model community of Alberta. More than 3,000 people are recorded as visiting the town in August of 1938 alone. Henry Ford needed a suitable name for his beautiful new village. He chose Alberta, named for Alberta Jean Johnson, the daughter of Frederick Johnson, superintendent of Ford's UP operations. As Henry Ford began to expand his share of the early automotive market, he became convinced he must safeguard his company from dependence on outside sources of materials. His method was to control the line of supply, from the natural resources to the final products. In 1920, Ford began to purchase iron ore properties and timberland in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and along with them sawmills. The mills were located at Iron Mountain, L'Anse, Pequaming, Alberta, and Big Bay. Attracted by the existing workforce, Henry Ford built his principal forest products plant at Iron Mountain, Michigan. This factory, run by Ford's cousin-in-law, Edward Kingsford, produced parts for Ford Model T, Model A, and station wagons nicknamed Woodies. As an employer, Ford entered the Upper Peninsula's job market at a time when the local mining industries were waning. Many people in the UP saw Henry Ford as the person who would provide a source of jobs when the mines eventually shut down. Henry Ford was known to share this belief. He foresaw great new growth as a result of his participation in the Upper Peninsula economy. Alberta was located in a hardwood forest that belonged to the Ford Motor Company and was close to the other Ford sawmills in L'Anse and Pequaming. To provide water for the Alberta sawmill, Henry Ford had Plumbago Creek dammed, creating the lake on the east side of the highway. In fact, the current route of the highway runs right over the dam itself. Beginning in 1936, the sawmill employed around 25 men. After the sawmill went into production, its first job was to cut lumber necessary to build 12 houses, 2 school buildings, a service building, and a reception building. Although Henry Ford believed that economic prosperity would come to the people in the towns where his mills and plants were located, the attempt to use the village industries concept at Alberta was unsuccessful. The new management at Ford Motor Company regarded Alberta as one of Henry Ford's pet projects that was not vital to the well-being of the company. Due to factors such as the reduction of wood components in car manufacturing and the condition of timber supply on company lands, the Ford Motor Company finally closed Alberta in 1954. In order to maintain the best interest of Ford Motor Company and the local community, the entire site was donated to Michigan Tech University on November 1954. The university planned to use it as a forest products research facility. Because of this donation, Alberta remains an active part of the UP's economy today. Today, at the Michigan Tech University Ford Alberta Center, foresters, applied ecologists, and wildlife ecologists participate in a semester-long undergraduate integrated field practicum with additional credited courses such as those in forestry and environmental resource management. Students live at the center for one semester and gain hands-on experience interacting with the surrounding 5,500 acres of forest and wetlands. Each student is assigned their own 80-acre plot to study and manage. The Ford Center and Research Forest is a living lab that provides excellent educational opportunities. Graduate programs are also available. The Ford Center and surrounding forest is a vital component for the students to achieve an undergraduate or graduate degree from Michigan Tech College of Forest Resources and Environmental Science. To the right, you can see the two identical old schoolhouses built for the Ford Alberta Center. One is being used as a classroom for the forestry students and the other for housing. The small building is the former bathroom and bathhouse for the residents of Alberta. It's now used as a hangout spot for students, and the college installed a sauna in the basement for the students to enjoy. Now we'll drive by the original houses and garages built for the community. These buildings were built by Michigan Tech for their forestry programs. Let's take a look at one of the houses available for nightly rental. The houses are also occasionally used for students when needed. I chose to stay in one of the smaller upstairs bedrooms of this house that I rented for the night. The original sawmill for the community is currently undergoing renovation and is expected to be open again to the public next spring. Now let's stop in the gift shop. Now let's take a look inside the old pump house museum that pumped water from the lake to run the sawmill. Here is one of the plots of land the students are assigned to study during their semester at the center. Nearby is Ogima Falls, a beautiful small waterfall. There are over 300 waterfalls in the UP. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan has so many waterfalls due to its geology, with ancient glaciers having exposed the bedrock and carved the landscape. A stopover along the way at a stand of gorgeous huge red pines on sandy soil. Next, we are on our way down a dirt road, formerly the main highway, to see a humpback bridge that crosses the Sturgeon River. This bridge was built in the early 1920s and was the very bridge Henry Ford traveled over to get to Alberta. Now we will visit the nearby ghost town of Herman. It was established in 1901 along the branch of the Duluth South Shore and Atlantic Railway, approximately midway between Astoria and Lance. A post office opened in January of 1903 and was discontinued in December of 1970. The settlement was founded by Finnish-born lumberjack Herman Karenin, who had been working in the lumber camps when he bought several 40-acre plots and constructed a crude log cabin. With the money he earned from lumbering, he established the largest and most productive farm in the area, which led to the community being named for him. For a number of years, the primary access to the area was via the Duluth, South Shore, and Atlantic Railroad Company. A school was built in 1903, and a post office followed in 1904. The Herman Athletic Association was organized in 1912, and a Farmers Cooperative Association in 1919. The area boasted at least one store and one mercantile business. Over the decades, the population has dwindled, and it is mostly a ghost town. A few people continue to live in the historic community. Now let's explore the old cemetery in Herman. I did some research on findagrave.com to see if I could find out any interesting information on the people buried in this Herman cemetery. There wasn't a lot of information posted, which could be because most of the residents were Finnish and English may have been a second language. I did find this article on findagrave.com about Matt Hoppala, who was charged with being the accessory to the murder of his infant granddaughter. His stepdaughter Jenny was charged with the murder. The article reads, charged with the murder of infant, Jenny Eckhoff and her stepfather Matt Hoppala were bound over to the January term of Circuit Court Tuesday by Justice Campbell, the girl on a charge of having murdered her infant and the latter on a charge of being an accessory to the crime. Both waived examination. Miss Eckhoff, unmarried, gave birth to a 6.5-pound infant on November 15th, and neighbors, knowing of her conduct for some time, notified Sheriff R.C. Cotilla, who made a search near the home and found the baby wrapped in a sack, placed in a box, and buried under a stump. Finger marks were visible on the child's neck. The parties concerned were brought to Lance and an inquest was conducted by Coroner H.M. Hansen, the jury reporting that the body of the child showed that it had been strangled. Herman, the scene of the supposed crime, is located 7 miles south of Lance on the South Shore Railroad and is settled by Finnish farmers. Jenny Eckhoff is 18 years of age. Attorney Joseph J. O'Connor will defend Miss Eckhoff at the trial in January. Additionally, I was able to find the grave of Herman Karanen, already discussed as the lumberjack founder of the town of Herman. I found he was born on the 5th of November, 1862 in Pulanka, Finland. He had 2 sons and 5 daughters with Jamina Havala. He died on the 10th of June, 1953 at the age of 90 and was buried in the Herman Cemetery. This is the grave of James Richards, born in March 1898 in Cornwall, England. He served in the British Army Royal Garrison Artillery. He received the Lord Wakefield Medal recipient in 1916. He was the husband to Dorothy Pratt Richards, and they had 3 children. Finally, here is the grave of little Esther Lahti. Esther was the daughter of Jacob and Kanitia Lahti from Finland. She died from diphtheria at the age of 10 years old. Now let's head north to Pequaming, where the old Ford sawmill, logging community, and Ford Bungalow are located. We will also visit the old cemetery. Pequaming, originally home to an Ojibwa tribe settlement, is a narrow neck of land almost surrounded by water. The small Native American village was abandoned by the time the American Fur Company trader Peter Krabasa visited in 1836. In 1877, Charles Hebard and Edward Thurber purchased a large tract of land on Keweenaw Point, favored especially for its deep, protected harbor and easy access to timber. The mill began its operations with a capital of $200,000 with stock owned mostly by the Hebard and Thurber families. The mill site was initially leased from David King, chief of the local Chippewa tribe, and then purchased from his heirs after his death. The mill operated under the name of Hebard and Thurber until the partnership was dissolved. Hebard became sole proprietor and renamed his company Charles Hebard and Sons. At its peak, the company employed a force of 200 men in the mill working full-time, 300 in the surrounding woods, and nearly 1,000 men in all. The company owned 100,000 acres of timberlands in Marquette, Baraga, Houghton, and Keweenaw counties. The company owned the buildings and surrounding land and was known as the Lumberman's Utopia because rent and water were free and wood could be obtained from the mill for a very small sum per load. The town included the mill, a company store, offices, boarding houses, hotel, livery stable, a bowling alley, bathhouses, churches, schools, parks, a band, an orchestra, ice rink, and over 100 houses. The Pequaming Mill was the first large-scale lumbering and milling operation in the Lake Superior region. When officials realized the white pine supply was nearly exhausted, they switched to hemlock and cedar. For shipment, the products were loaded into boxcars and towed across the bay to Baraga, and then shipped by rail to their destinations. The original sawmill operated until 1887 when it burned in a fire of unknown origins and was replaced by a larger mill within 60 days. When Charles Hebert died in 1904, his sons Daniel and Charles inherited the company and continued the operations. The Bungalow, which later became Henry Ford's summer home, was constructed in 1913. In 1922, the Heberts were approached by the Ford Motor Company, who wanted to purchase their timber stands only. Mindful of Pequaming's future, the Heberts convinced Ford to purchase the mill and surrounding town as well, and entered into secret negotiations with the hope of completing the sale before operations began. In September 1923, Ford Motor Company purchased the mill and surrounding town for the sum of $2,850,000. The purchase included the double band sawmill, lathe and shingle mills, 40,000 acres and timberland, 30 million board feet of lumber, 3 million board feet of cut logs, the town land and buildings, the railroad, and towing and water equipment. Renovations on the mill began and entailed removing the lathe and shingle mills, altering the eastern face, dismantling the old burner, and adding a new powerhouse on the west side that housed a 1,000 horsepower triple expansion marine engine from a World War I Liberty boat. After repair and refitting, the sawmill reopened on September 24th with a workforce that received $5 a day for an 8-hour shift instead of the previous $3.50 for a longer day. By the end of February 1925, Ford had connected the Hebert Railroad to the Ford Railroad in Lance, allowing each plant to specialize in one type of wood. Lumber from Pequaming Mill was generally shipped by water to plants in Dearborn, Edgewater, and Chester, Michigan, mostly in the form of crating lumber. The better grades of lumber were sent by rail to Iron Mountain for use in the auto manufacturing plants. During its peak, the sawmill provided flooring for floorboards, truck boxes, and wood panels for station wagons. By 1933, car sales had decreased enough due to the Great Depression that the demand for lumber was nearly non-existent. As the mill was idle during that period, Henry Ford created other work for residents by establishing a cooperative farm east of town. As an additional measure, the company store adjusted its food prices and donated clothing and shoes to employees and their families. Ford also used the town as a model for his theories on self-reliance and education. He established a vocational school in his summer home to be used during the school year, and also opened 4 one-room elementary and intermediate schools in September 1935. In 1937, the company built a high school, which contained state-of-the-art home economics, food and clothing labs, and a library, as well as the first fluorescent lights in a Michigan school. In 1935, the company decided to ship its products by truck and instituted just-in-time shipping for its logging operations. After the United States entered in World War II, the company's ships were diverted, which resulted in the lumber being trucked to Lance and then shipped by rail. However, a shortage of truck tires and increasing shipping costs prompted the company to close the mill on October 9, 1942, with the last log sawed on October 28th. There was a burst of activity after a financial recovery from the Depression in 1940, but a shortage of manpower because of the war became an obstacle. The year 1942 saw the close of the Pequaming Mill and schools. There had been about 400 residents in Pequaming when the mill closed. Many people from Pequaming started farming or transferred to different Ford plants, such as the one in Lance. In 1989, the Bungalow, Ford's home, was purchased and restored, and in 1993 it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. For a while it operated as a bed and breakfast, and later and to this day the entire house can be rented. The powerhouse and Ford water tank remain. There are still some family homes and rentals in the community, as well as commercial fishing operations. Pequaming is still frequented as a ghost town and by former inhabitants for reunions. The Ford Bungalow, once called the Hebert Summer House, is a private house located north of Lawrence in Pequaming, Michigan. The house was designated a Michigan State Historic Site in 1979 and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1878, lumber baron Charles Hebert founded the logging town of Pequaming, 9 miles north of Lawrence on the shore of Lake Superior. It was the first large-scale lumbering operation in the Upper Peninsula. Hebert built and owned all the buildings in the town, including approximately 100 houses built for the workers. The population of Pequaming peaked at around 800 in 1897. Charles Hebert died in 1904, passing his lumber business in the town of Pequaming to his sons, Daniel and Charles. In 1914, Daniel Hebert built the lodge as his periodic residence. In 1923, the brothers sold the operation to Henry Ford. Although Ford was primarily interested in the Heberts' 40,000 acres of timber, the brothers insisted he buy the sawmill and the town at the same time. Ford used the town to produce wooden pieces for the frames and bodies of Ford station wagons. Henry Ford took over Daniel Hebert's lodge for his own personal use and summered here from 1923 to 1941. However, Ford's need for lumber dropped during the Great Depression, and shipping problems during World War II spelled the end for Pequaming's mill. Ford shut the plant down in 1942. With the loss of jobs, most families soon left the town. The Hebert Ford house is currently privately owned but available as a vacation rental. The Ford house is a rectangular 2-story lodge built in the bungalow style. It is of frame construction covered with all white clapboards with a low gable roof with long shed dormers. A veranda is contained under the roofline, which is supported with 7 cement pillars. The main floor has double-hung 6/6 paneled windows with dark trim, and 2 sets of French doors open onto the veranda. Inside are 8 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a large living room, a dining room, and an office. Outside was a caretaker's residence, a formal garden, and a tennis court. The house reflects a gracious style of living that rich industrialists valued in northern Michigan vacation lodges. Now let's take a look at what little remains of the town of Pequaming. Only one building still stands along with the foundation of another. Next we'll go to the beautiful Pequaming Cemetery with a gorgeous rock wall and iron fence. It was established in 1896. Inside the gate is a plaque with a short summary of the town of Pequaming, as well as a map. The map includes a QR code you can use to identify graves and who they belong to. The cemetery is one of the most beautiful I've been to, with a unique stone fence and old graves and large mature trees. This is the grave of John Harju, born in 1882 and died in 1948. This article was posted on findagrave.com. John Harju, well-known resident in this district for several years, died at 1 o'clock Saturday at Morgan Heights Sanitarium, Marquette, where he had been a patient for 3 months. Funeral services were held Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock at the Swanson Funeral Home, Reverend Walter Tarola of Laurium officiating with burial in the Pequaming Cemetery. Mr. Harju has lived in the Big Bay area for the past 6 years. Previous to that, he made his home in Marquette and Aura. Before his retirement, he had been employed as a millwright for the Ford Motor Company in Big Bay. He was born in Finland on May 17, 1884, and has lived in this community for the past 25 years. Next, let's look at the sad graves of the 3 young Anderson children. As published in the Michigan Observer Thursday, October 27, 1898, 3 children, aged 2, 4, and 6, of Michael Anderson at Pequaming were burned to death. The mother went out to milk the cow, leaving the children alone. It is thought the oldest child, in playing with the fire in the kitchen stove, set the house on fire. The house and furniture, valued at $300, are a total loss with no insurance. Nearby is another sad family grave of the Kopana children. No information can be found online, but 4 children are listed on the tombstone. John, age 1, August, age 2, Carrie, an infant, along with an unnamed infant, are buried here. Next, another sad child grave of 1-year-old Layla Mackey, born 1915 and died 1916. Another baby grave that is inscribed, our darling Helen M. Glover, born 1912, died 1913. Finally, we have the grave of Einar Hansen, born 1888 and died 1945 at the age of 57 in an automobile accident. He, along with his parents, were born in Norway, and he served in World War I. He worked as a carpenter. Finally, we'll take a gorgeous drive out to the breathtakingly beautiful Point Abbaye, also called Point Abbaye. The rock cliffs are made of Jacobsville sandstone. In the distance from the point, you can see the Huron Islands to the north, the Huron Mountains to the east, and the Keweenaw Peninsula to the west.